Hello, everyone, on a Saturday morning during rivalry week. Back together again so soon. We provide Nebraska post-game here at the Voice of College Football, GBR, each and every Saturday, or in this case, Friday, with a huge upset win to conclude the Mickey Joseph era at Nebraska, 24-17 over the Hawkeyes. So check out that post-game with our guy Jake. And then also, of course, we've got our weekly Nebraska live show with Greg Peterson from Husker Online each and every Monday. And we will be back Monday at 6 Eastern and 5 Central. But hey, why are we here? Of course, Nebraska has named Matt Rhule the new head coach. So unlike many of the recent hires over the past couple of years in college football with the big brands where the school has fooled us, Matt Rhule has been on this short list thrown around by media and fans for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and going back to Scott Frost's dismissal in late September, early October. So this one, not a big surprise. It's been specifically reported over the last few days, so it's been out there. So my job in getting together right here is this is what we do here at the Voice of College Football. Take any major head coaching, firing, and hiring, and we are on here live to get your response, to get your reaction, and of course, I will give you mine as well. I had stated a few weeks ago when a number of fans in the chat had asked me the top head coaching candidates, in my opinion, not based on what I was speculating, who they were looking at, but who I would hire that was reasonable. Matt Rhule was very high on the list for me. I think I put him number 2 or number 3 among, again, reasonable candidates, did not include Urban Meyer. So there we go. Matt Rhule, tremendous success at Temple and Baylor, considering the circumstances. Considering the circumstances at Temple and at Baylor, Temple has not been a good football program forever. And Matt Rhule took over Temple and, lifted them to a place beyond the numbers in which they were at one point. I remember against Notre Dame, a Saturday night ABC primetime game, because they were ranked in the top 10 in the nation, or the top 15 in the nation at the time, something in that range, 15 to 22 in the nation. I believe the ranking was 22 in the nation, and a 10-win football team. And Temple gave Notre Dame a game. And built some excitement on the Temple campus for Owls football, but most notably produced NFL players at a place that does not produce NFL players. And of course, not at the quantity that you will see at national brands and powers, but the turnaround at Temple was astonishing. And usually Nebraska fans, so keep this in mind, if you take the Temple experience and the Baylor experience, that first season is rough. The first season at Temple was not a turnaround. I believe 2 wins the first season before he went 6-6. And then he went 10-4 and lost the conference championship game. Then he went 10-3 and won Temple's first conference championship in like 49 years, that 4th season. So the buildup was quick after the first season. And I don't know, that could be coincidence because it's only 2 times that he's rebuilt a program. So this is not a consistent trend, but if it is a trend and becomes one at Nebraska, don't be surprised if the Huskers' record does not improve much or improve at all in year 1, coming off this 4-8 season, which also meant 4-8, 3-6 in the Big Ten. At Baylor, so a big step up there from Temple to Baylor, goes to the Big 12 and takes over for Art Briles and the mess that was Baylor football from a off-the-field culture standpoint, of course, and everything that ensued there. Not from a football standpoint, but, of course, when the culture goes downhill, that impacts the football and players leave and players are unmotivated and undisciplined and all of that. So Matt Rhule takes Baylor over, and 1 win the first season, 1-11. Matt Rhule at Baylor. Season number 1. They were actually worse. And then 7-6 with the bowl victory. And then on to the Big 12 championship game against Oklahoma. Went to overtime in that game, 20-19. And then he moved on to the Carolina Panthers. Much like many college coaches, did not find success in the NFL. That could be debated all over the place in regards to his fault, The franchise has been no good for about 5 seasons regardless. They, of course, went to a Super Bowl in 2015 with John Fox. No, John Fox was the head coach of the first Super Bowl. The last Super Bowl, of course, involving Cam Newton there as the quarterback. But Carolina, I'm not an NFL guy these days, so to try to rate Carolina as an NFL franchise, I cannot do that. But to really assess responsibility for Matt Rhule and his 2+ seasons at Carolina, I believe went 5-11, and then he only lasted 5 games this past season before he was ousted. All right, I wanted to get the fan reaction, get your viewpoint on Matt Rhule. Again, I believe that this is I'm going to fall short of calling it a home run hire. There's only a few guys out there that basically can say, you can make the assumption to a certain extent that the program's going to turn around just because that guy walked on campus and because the recruiting is going to be through the roof and because he knows how to organize. Trev Alberts in his statement mentioned attention to detail. The great coaches, whether they do it themselves or they have somebody else do it, and usually it's a combination because they can't get to everything and they can't look out for every player, every unit, in addition to all the administration tasks and the publicity, promotional type and media related opportunities and responsibilities that they have. Can they be detail oriented themselves specifically, but by extension, they're detail oriented through their assistant coaches. And that is a must. All the great ones are detail oriented. I can't think of one that is not. And again, it's not necessarily them. Most of the time it is specifically them. Nick Saban, Urban Meyer come to mind first and foremost, detail oriented themselves. And then it runs through the staff. For other guys like Bobby Bowden, let's say, less detail oriented, but he still knew the value of details. And that was maintained through the coaching staff. All right, let's get your response, because I'll give this hire a solid grade, a strong grade. Matt Rhule can run my football program. Yes, he knows what he's doing. I believe that this is a good hire. Again, I'm not going to stamp it as home run, out of the park hire. Brian Kelly, Lincoln Riley. It could turn out to be. He hasn't had those kind of programs to try to run and win. He's had Temple and Baylor. All right. Come on, dog. Let's roll. Well, when nobody's watching, I don't roll until we get a few people on here at least. So there we go. All right. Benjamin says, what a sad day for Nebraska. Well, mediocre hire. Ballard Sports Media. Appreciate you being here, Ballard. He did good at Baylor. And we will be here about another half hour. Anthony Moore. Well, Matt Rhule's foundation was on defense. He was a linebacker at Penn State, and that's where he cut his teeth through the coaching ranks on the defensive side of the ball. Get a strong offensive coordinator, and we'll see if he retains Mickey Joseph. We'll see if he retains Mark Whipple and the coaching staff. We'll see how much of them stay. Most likely, not many. He will want his guys, his people. But a Mark Whipple is pretty experienced and pretty successful. I don't know what the relationship is there. I guarantee that Matt Rhule knows just about everybody on this coaching staff already, that he is familiar with their work, and he's familiar with them, just about all of them. Ron says, just saw Matt Rhule live on ESPN talking to the game day crew. He's saying all the right things, GBR. Yes, Rhule's never been able to use the transfer portal to rebuild. Ben comments here. Will he be able to avoid his typical first-year dip with a good transfer portal class? Good point right there. I outlined the dips at Temple and Baylor, but he didn't have the advantage of the transfer portal at that point. So you can fix a football team much quicker, i.e. look out to USC and Lincoln Riley. You can fix a football team much quicker these days than you could before, where it was just, okay, I don't like this football team. They're not very good. They're not motivated. They don't have the work ethic. They're not the guys I would have recruited, but I'm stuck with them except for the freshmen I'm bringing in. And I didn't even have much time to even bring in a freshman class. So Matt Rhule's impact on this 2023 class is going to be minimal. He has just about 2 weeks to secure the guys that he wants out of this 23 class to make sure they don't scramble and go somewhere else, because maybe some of them were attached to Mickey Joseph or their position coach. But this 2023 class for Nebraska was going to be small and not that impactful, at least on paper. You never know who's going to pop out and become a great player. But he's got the transfer portal, which obviously was utilized by Nebraska as much and on paper as successfully as anybody in the Big Ten. And I would say more so. And it was my opinion that Nebraska upgraded itself more than any team in the Big Ten this past offseason. Just didn't work out. O'Shawn Mathis, Casey Thompson, et cetera, Trey Palmer. James says he better keep Mickey Joseph and Bill Bush. Matt Rhule would be dumb if he would let those two coaches go. Mickey Joseph, absolutely. Bill Bush, based on what I hear, I'm not going to make that personal observation, but based on what I hear, feedback, yes, I would agree. Trey Palmer going to the NFL draft, no big surprise there. And again, we'll be back on Monday night. Matt Rhule is going to be introduced to the media and to Nebraska Husker Nation on Monday. And we'll be here with Greg Peterson at 6 Eastern, 5 Central on Monday. When will he start making coaching changes? Well, I would think a couple things here. I think it's been pretty obvious to see that over the past 3 days that Matt Rhule has had the job at Nebraska. They just had to work out the details. So in addition to working with his lawyer and working with Trev Alberts and company on his contract to work out those details, 8-year contract, by the way, 8 years, that he was also starting his list. He probably already started his list from the time he was fired at Carolina. That guy, in terms of reasonable hires for different positions. So I'm sure he made that list. I'm sure he's got that list all the time. Sure, any head coach has that list all the time. Who would I want to hire for these specific units and positions? And then obviously once you're out of a job, then that is vital. That is key. That is the responsibility. That is the number one assignment of any head coach, in addition to recruiting, of course, and now transfer portal, would be assembling a coaching staff, because any great coach, any great leader anywhere surrounds themselves with a great set of leaders in any organization. So that is vital. So he's going to start making coaching changes fairly soon. I would say in the next week to 10 days. He already knows who he wants and who is reasonably going to be interested, and probably has talked to a few guys, starting offensive and defensive coordinators. Those would be the starting positions. Asawar, I believe he will retain Mickey Joseph. I'm guessing that Trev Alberts suggested it or talked to him about it, not to say we highly encourage this or you have to, but to say this guy has done X, Y, and Z for us. These are his qualities, characteristics that he brings to the table, especially as a recruiter, and he would be a tremendous asset to the staff. But it's your team, it's your staff. Go. And maybe Matt Rhule already knows Mickey Joseph. These coaches talk all the time. Coaching clinics, cross paths all over the place. And Matt Rhule is not an old man by any stretch, but he's been in the field for 25 years. Oh boy, Fumblerooski, which of course one of the great famed plays in the history of Nebraska football and the Orange Bowl. Well, Oklahoma pulled it off too. But anyway, Fumblerooski. Mark, how does this hire compare to the Mike Riley hire? if you look at coaching resumes, it's pretty similar. It is pretty similar. Mike Riley did an outstanding job at a place similar to Temple and Baylor, where there are limited resources, limited facilities, limited amount of money, limited recruiting prowess, limited brand image to sell, especially considering what Mike Riley faced at Oregon State at the time that he succeeded. The Pac-12 was much better. The Pac-10 at the time was much better. And he did well at Oregon State, good enough to get an NFL head coaching job. And what did he do there? He did okay. He had a decent record, but he got fired. He didn't last long with the Chargers. Mike Riley's issues at Nebraska, in my view, were a few things. And again, I'm sure that there are much more insightful takes from ingrained Nebraska people day to day that could tell you why Mike Riley failed at Nebraska. But for me, number one, he's a California guy, or he's a West Coast guy, and he went California in recruiting. He didn't know where to go in recruiting, and he went California. And again, this may be something that every Nebraska coach is going to have to deal with and overcome, Matt Rhule being the next, and that's the recruiting situation between, okay, where do we go to get players? We're going to get 3 players in the state of Nebraska each year that are going to be hopefully an impact. That's not enough. And we can look around the Midwest, and it's just kind of an odd fit in the Big Ten geographically. It's just kind of an odd fit. And I know Minnesota and Wisconsin are right there, and Iowa, and they are successful to certain degrees. But it's been that Texas pipeline in the past. And Mike Riley went California. So I thought that was one issue there. He didn't do it successfully, but he went California. And then the other would be that Mike Riley had a quarterback that didn't fit his system. So instead of either, and he didn't have the transfer portal, but Mike Riley wanted to run a West Coast offense, and he did it with a quarterback who was basically a runner who could throw through a brick wall. And that's Tommy Armstrong. Really strong arm, but not necessarily the most precision quarterback that's ever walked down a field that could execute a West Coast offense. So bad fit between quarterback and offense, and also the recruiting issues. And I think it's pretty substantiated that Mike Riley wasn't necessarily a taskmaster. All you had to do is listen to the guy talk for 5 minutes, and you could tell that he may have been a little bit soft. Now, you can be a really nice guy, especially to the media, and still run a disciplined program. But apparently Mike Riley, the strength and conditioning slumped considerably. So issues there. I wouldn't expect Matt Rhule to be in the same mold there. Turk likes it. We'll have to send out a poll and see who really likes it and who does not. I believe I did. I believe we sent out a poll about Matt Rhule. Yes, based on your satisfaction of Matt Rhule as the head coach. I'll have to run that on here. So we ran the poll. Would you be satisfied with the naming of Matt Rhule as Nebraska's new head coach? Almost 500 of you, 491. Yes, 46%. No, 54%. So about split, but more no's than yeses. Jason 41079. Last fired NFL coach Nebraska hired was, in terms of a head coach, I'm trying to think. We've got Mike Riley. There you go. Didn't have to think back. I was going past Riley and going back into the, of course, Bill Callahan as well. But you got Riley and you've got Callahan. Bill Callahan, of course, took a team to a Super Bowl with not necessarily a team he built, but all right, Husker D. We're absolutely doomed to mediocrity forever. What the absolute is Trev Alberts thinking. This hire needed to be Bo Pelini level or better. This is in between Bo and Mike Riley. What a fail. So better than Mike Riley, not as good as Bo. Husker D, I respect your opinion. I can't see where Bo Pelini, before being hired by Nebraska, proved anything close to what Matt Rhule has proven as a head coach. Of course, he's been successful twice at Temple and Baylor. Bo Pelini at that point had not been given that opportunity. And Bo Pelini, of course, in retrospect, did much better than the two guys that succeeded him. So between Jason and Husker D, do not like the hire to the extreme. Ballard, hey Mark, I'm back. Stepped aside. Yeah, I think Rhule is an example of a guy that fits for college, but shows that not every coach works out everywhere. Yeah, there's only a few of those guys. Travis, as we outlined when we first got on here, and I gave my thoughts on Matt Rhule and have in the past, Travis lets us know, yes, year 3 at Baylor, year 4 at Temple, really years 3 and 4 at Temple. Year 1, both places, if this is a trend, we don't know. I don't think twice is a trend, but that's the only indication we have. That's all the track record that we have, is that year 1 could be a rough one. But as somebody earlier pointed out, he's got the transfer portal this time around. Didn't have that before at Temple and at Baylor. You inherited the players you inherited. You get hired so close to National Signing Day. Even when it's in February, you can only have so much impact on that first recruiting class. So you got to play with the guys that you had. But he's got a huge opportunity with the transfer portal. Put Derek in the Mike Riley boat of hires. Jason says, also look at the fact that he left those programs soon after success. Well, he's less apt to leave Nebraska, though. He's going to be making more money. He's at a better program, higher profile. There's not as many places to go. When you're at Temple, you are looking to move on. You're either just a football coach that loves coaching football, and this is as good as you're going to do, and it's still an FBS job, still making a few million a year, and you're going to stay at Temple. But most of the Temple coaches, what do? They're young guys that are looking to move on. So that's a job that you jump from. Baylor, when you do that well as he did, you go from 1-11 to 7-6 to 11-3 in a Big 12 championship game. Then you get plucked up by the NFL. Well, that's what happens. If Matt Rhule does as well at Nebraska as he did at Baylor, if he's playing in the Big 10 championship game in 3 years, is the NFL, considering what happened with the Panthers, necessarily going to be knocking on his door? I don't think so. I don't think it's as likely. He's had his misstep in the NFL. He's likely relegated to. There are going to be other options for NFL teams that need the next guy that's going to be a big splash hire. Matt Rhule has failed in the NFL. Therefore, I don't see that. And Nebraska is at the level of program, again, that there are only so many other places you can go. Husker D doesn't believe that Matt Rhule can go 8-4. Joey Foster, West Virginia fan, believes that Matt Rhule is an awesome guy and will prove to be an awesome hire. Husker D says, Usain Bolt's comparing NFL careers to college careers are the same people advocating against Urban Meyer, which was our only hope for revival. Nebraska is a somewhat difficult place to win in this new age of college football. based on the expectations, based on the past history, which is through the roof, which is legendary, which is talking best program in college football in the 1990s. But there are no players around the state of Nebraska. You got to go 500 plus miles away to get more than a few impact players on the team. I don't know how close they were to hiring Urban Meyer, how much of a consideration that was. I don't know how interested Urban Meyer was in the job. The only comment that I consistently made here concerning Urban Meyer was I believe that Nebraska checks off every box. They'll pay the head coach the money. They'll give him enough money for assistant coaches at the top of the sport. The facilities are being upgraded, are going to be state of the art. The NIL initiative seems to be right there near the top of college football, very competitive. All those items, the brand, the image, the fan base loyalty is at the top of the sport. The loyalty of the fans, that has to impress a coach when he can walk in to a game with a team that's 3-8 and see that the place is packed. And just the reputation, everybody knows that. Anybody around college football knows the statistic concerning sellouts at Memorial Stadium in Lincoln. So that has to impress somebody rather than I'm going to go to UCLA and play in front of 20,000 people. If we're not great, if we're not playing for the Pac-12 championship, if we've got a decent team, we got a pretty good team. Chip Kelly, 8-4 last year, but the place is going to be 3/4 or 90% empty. I would think that would impact. You just know that you got that support from the masses, but it only extends to, well, you're going to have the support from the boosters and the people with money too. So the only thing that I questioned with the Urban Meyer portion of this was him looking at the total package at Nebraska and saying everything checks off. Everything checks off except recruiting footprint. And every successful coach in college obviously knows it starts with recruiting, but I think Urban Meyer is even ultra recruiting based. Look at his recruiting classes at Florida and Ohio State. They're insane. And he may have thought, can I get players to go to Nebraska? All right. I do appreciate everybody being here for this impromptu live. Of course, it's a huge day of college football. We'll be on the main channel and we'll be on all our number of channels throughout our network of YouTube channels here at the Voice of College Football. So check us out throughout the day. I'll be at halftime of Ohio State, Michigan on the main channel, Michigan and Ohio State channels, and then on throughout the day. Here we've got another horrible hire, another Bill Callahan reboot with Tanner. Jerome does not like it. 500 seasons. Ted wanted to give Mickey Joseph 3 years. That's an interesting debate. I don't know that we saw that much that would make you want to think that Mickey Joseph should be the next head coach. It's not a situation like Jim Leonard at Wisconsin, who has been one of the very best defensive coordinators in college football and been at Wisconsin guy, and has known the culture, the campus, the environment, has shown his leadership skills right there. Mickey Joseph has as well from that standpoint. But Jim Leonard, I believe the Wisconsin move was, we're not going anywhere this year. This program is starting to flatline and slightly decline. So we don't want to lose Jim Leonard. Give him the job now. Give him 9 games to show what he can do. And unless he capsizes, he's the next guy. Where with Nebraska and Mickey Joseph, I think that was clearly a move to say, who's the most qualified guy here that's going to keep this thing together through the rest of this season so we can go out and get somebody else. I don't think they ever seriously considered Mickey Joseph. And obviously, based on wins and losses and the performance of the team, it's difficult to judge Mickey Joseph because He lost Casey Thompson at quarterback for 3 games. Now, any solid program in college football should be able to lose its quarterback for 3 games against Minnesota, Illinois, and Michigan. Those are 3 good teams, obviously. Not discarding the schedule there. Those are 3 good to great teams in that range, top 5 to top 30 teams in the country. So it's difficult to go without your starting quarterback, but you take the starting quarterback off of any premier team in college football and they're still winning games. They may not win the biggest games on the schedule, but we saw where this offense just boop. So the quarterback room, the depth in the quarterback, the recruiting has not been anywhere close to where it has to be at quarterback. Of course, the starting quarterback was a transfer portal guy. Dalton, not asking for a national title. It would be nice, but it's not in the cards for a while. I'm asking for a bowl game. Yeah, let's start there. Or a conference title game again. I'm tired of losing. Dalton, that's completely understandable. 82 teams go to bowl games. Think about that. There's 131 FBS teams. And 82 of them go to bowl games. It's not, you don't have to be elite. For those of you who've been around since, let's say, the 70s or 80s, when there were 12 bowl games and you had to be really good to get to a bowl game, you'll see, if you go back 45, 50 years, where there were ranked teams who didn't get to a bowl game. And then, you know, even throughout the 80s and 90s, there'd be 20, 25 bowl games. And so you had to be a good team to get to a bowl game. Now, you don't have to be good. You just have to have a pulse to get to a bowl game. And Nebraska hasn't been to one since what? The 2016 season, the Tennessee game, right? 5, 6 consecutive seasons without bowl games. It's the longest streak in the nation. Colorado's been to bowl games since then. Colorado's a dumpster fire. Rutgers was a dumpster fire before Greg Schiano came back. They've been to bowl games more recently. Everybody's been to more. Now that Kansas made a bowl game this year at 6-6, Kansas going to a bowl game, and now Nebraska has, with their illustrious history, has the indelible honor of being the team, the program that has the longest bowlless streak. That's tough to do, not win 6 games, when basically you've got 3 non-conference games that 2 should be gimme. So you got 2 automatic wins, or you should, right out of the gate. Mark says he was in my top 5, and I hope I am right. And I do think it's going to take as long because I keep telling people our cupboards are not bare talent-wise. It just needs evaluated and trained. West Virginia Joey. Okay, Nebraska fans, send us Matt Rhule. I'll send you Neil Brown if you hate this hire so much. I would take Matt Rhule over Neil Brown. Travis could be making a good point here. An upgrade for Nebraska, but I think Primetime would have been a better hire, and that's who they wanted, possibly. That was the big talk about a week ago. Husker D says Matt Rhule should have went to Wisconsin or Kirk Ferentz's replacement at Iowa. Well, Husker D, you think he's a horrible hire. So if they're thinking the same thing, they don't want Matt Rhule. And yeah, I don't know what Kirk Ferentz thinks about his future as an NFL or a head coach. Trying to think how old he would be. He's in his mid to late 60s. Brandon Becker, what sort of offense does Matt Rhule run? Well, I saw quite a few Baylor games when he was there. He certainly, one of his starting quarterbacks at Temple, surprisingly, has played quite a bit in the NFL, and that's P.J. Walker. As soon as I saw him pop up in an NFL game a couple of years ago, I was like, seriously, P.J. Walker is getting starts in the NFL? All the guys he had at Baylor, all the guys that he had at Temple, after the first quarterback he had, I can't think of his name, at Temple. The other guys, I can't recall anything distinctive about his offense. Like it's not a triple option or it's not Josh Heupel. It's not got a stamp on it like a Josh Heupel offense or like a Jeff Lebby offense. Then at Ole Miss and now moving on to Oklahoma or Steve Sarkisian. You can tell his offenses with creativity and speed and space and different types of motion that create one-on-one matchups. Lane Kiffin, Lincoln Riley. If you watch college football across the board, except for tempo, and there are some outliers, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota are more traditional. But in terms of formations and sets, who's not running the same thing? So you're going to see the quarterback in the spread, and you're going to see a lot of RPO if he's got a running quarterback, or a lot of read zone. And, there was nothing distinct that I can think of or remember about the Baylor offense that you don't see all over, especially the Big 12. But at this point, all across college football. Joey, thank you so much for the reminder. Please, when you shop on Amazon, use the link that we provide in the description section of all the videos. Go to Amazon and use the link that we provide. That way, you get the same shopping experience. You're going to Amazon to shop for Christmas anyway, so it's the same shopping experience for you. It doesn't cost you a penny, so you are not directly donating or contributing to the channel. What you're doing is you're telling Amazon, hey, a portion of this goes to the voice of college football. So we would appreciate that. Put that link somewhere where you will remember it when you go shopping on Amazon. Again, it's in the description section of all the videos. Grab the Amazon link, put it somewhere where you will remember it. And so if you spend $100, it's all going to Amazon. If you spend $100 at Amazon, for example, it's all going to Amazon as opposed to send us 1%, 3%, 5%. It depends on the item. Thank you for that. Oh, Joey, that's a big statement. I really believe that Matt Rhule will prove to be your next Tom Osborne. I think we would take about half of Tom Osborne. Tom Osborne's first season was what, 1973? 73 through 97. So he was there for 25 years. I believe it was 73. And immediately, Tom Osborne took over an amazing program, of course, from Delaney. But in addition to that, Tom Osborne, oh my goodness, Tom Osborne didn't have a bad season. Tom Osborne, 9-3 was a bad year. He lived in the top 5 to 10 in the country. Of course, Barry Switzer was in his way early in his career. And so a lot of Nebraska fans and other people were judging him harshly in his first 10 to 15 years until the early 90s because he didn't break through to win a national championship. Of course, famously went for 2. Fortunately, he was able to get national titles after that near the end of his career. But he ran a program that, aside from Oklahoma getting in its way and then Miami for a stretch of time, could have won a zillion national titles, but was right there in the running for a national title over and over and over and over every year. The success is just crazy. And then, of course, he broke through. You got to credit Tom Osborne for a lot of things. We could go on for 2 hours about Tom Osborne, but I'm just speaking specifically to his ability to recognize the issue and to watch those Florida State and Miami teams line up against his team in the late 80s and then not get away from his identity, not get away from the program's identity and core strength and conditioning, offensive line play, front seven on defense, all of that, but to tweak it, to adjust it, to add and complement to it, to build with Florida speed and be able to match and then still wear down Miami in the 95 Orange Bowl, but still win with his type of, we're going to wear you down, but we can hit you for a pass. We can play action, boom. And of course, Tommy Frazier didn't hurt, and he wins 3 national championships. Just very, especially at that time when college football was much more conservative, just a tremendous move and vision by Tom Osborne to be able to not scrap it and start over, but to be able to adjust. Michael Camp is throwing out defensive line coach from Texas A&M and Georgia DB coach as possible hires. Travis. Travion Henderson is out for Ohio State today. Certainly was not necessarily counting on him being available, nor even if he was available, if Mayan Williams is healthy and Dallin Hayden, of course, doing what he did last week. I didn't see Travion Henderson being any kind of impact on the offense today anyway. Yeah, this just did not seem, I may have been wrong and would have certainly admitted it, but I didn't see Urban Meyer. The talk is good for the channel to talk up Urban Meyer and talk about it. And that's what people wanted to hear and people wanted to think. And of course, his name is thrown out for any major job where coach is on the hot seat or becomes available. But yeah. I don't think the recruiting piece is there for Urban Meyer. I just don't think that he looks at Nebraska and thinks, I can win big here. Husker D, there's the record. It's the best record aside from 2 old Notre Dame coaches, Frank Leahy and Newt Rockne. So those are the only, basically, if you're talking college football, the way we know it now, post-World War II, Urban Meyer is the best record. Love him or hate him, best record in college football history. All right, folks. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Again, we'll be back here Monday, 6 Eastern, 5 Central. That's after Matt Rhule will be introduced to Nebraska media and fans. And we'll be here with Greg Peterson from Husker Online during our weekly Nebraska show. Again, 6 Eastern, 5 Central on Monday. And we'll see you then. I appreciate everybody jumping on. Just wanted to get your thoughts and opinions. And I certainly provided mine on one Matt Rhule, new head coach at Nebraska. Is he the next Tom Osborne? Is he the next Bill Callahan, Mike Riley? We will, of course, find out. I got to think it's going to be somewhere in between that. Husker D pointing out Matt Rhule, 47-43. Understand that he took over 2 ailing programs. So put that into context. The 2 programs took off. Look at the trajectory of both Temple and Baylor once he took over. But year 1, both times, rough. He does have the transfer portal now. Enjoy the football today, and we will see you back here on Monday, 6 Eastern, 5 Central.